Hello. I started recording. How are you?
I'm all right.
How was your 2020?
Last year,
Yeah, the pandemic year.
it was a mix of, you know, pleasure and pain, uh,
Okay.
and productive time for me.
Uh-huh.
You know, 2020. Yeah,
As far as filmmaking or
yeah. As far as filmmaking, it was a productive time for me. Um,
were you
I,
working
yeah.
remotely, professionally, or
Well,
what helped you the productivity? What about the pandemic helped your artistic filming productivity?
I think it was the limitation of it. So I spent almost a year making a short film called The Desire, and then you know, my partner Talia helped me with it, and we I finished that right in January, February, and then there were other things that I shot earlier that was a bit more personal and about kind of isolation. I was going through my divorce, and that footage, I just put it aside because it didn't really match what I was doing. So by the time the pandemic hit, those really sort of quieter footage that I got, um, I was able to construct into something, sort of taking that mood and putting it directly into the feeling and the anxieties around the pandemic. And I
And
made
what's
another
what
film
yeah, what's that film called?
that's called Here.
And
And
how's it different? How does it how did it blossom within the pandemic, and did it sharpen your vision for it?
um, I mean, it's funny. There's not much. It's just it's out of a car window, and you see rain and some branches, and then it cuts to this mountain mound that shows up in a lot of my films, and then I just say something like, which I recorded just for the film. Um, I say we've been a little freaked out, but we're still here, and that was pretty much it. That was the only line. I didn't. It was like literally something I made in like one day, and I just wanted that immediacy. It's funny
Hmm.
because I spent a year, almost a year and a half, making one short film that I love called Desire, and then this other film I did in a couple of days as a direct response to the pandemic. I sent it to a couple of writers, and Kyle Harris, who writes for Westward Denver, picked it up and did an article on it and expanded on it, and that led me to then I had this other idea of getting filmmakers together, and I did that anthology with my buddy uh, Andy, um, and that was Cinema 19.
So have you been continuously making films since a certain time? When did you start getting into
I'm
film
sorry,
work?
that wasn't Ed. That was Adam. Adam, not
Okay,
Ed.
Adam. Okay.
Yeah, Adam helped me. Okay,
So
go ahead.
so
Sorry.
how did your artistic life start? Did it start with film? Was it a different passion in a different medium, or when you were growing up?
Yeah, no, I. So
Was
just the first point you made. Yeah, I'm always working on something. Um, just to briefly answer your first point, I think I was fascinated by the limitations that I couldn't get this crew. I had this, when the pandemic hit, I was like, I have this great autobiographical script that I wanted to work on, and I was like, what am I thinking? Like, I have to cast this, I have to get, and it was like I needed money, and so in a way, I kind of went back to what I always did, which is I have nothing, but I have a camera.
right.
I have these things. So that limitation was freeing. And to answer your question, my background is actually in art. So not like I studied art or anything. Like I was kind of, I was a child and always drew
Hmm.
and painted and received attention because of that. People liked my work. I would win awards,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
people
that
seemed genuinely to like it, to like my
yeah, because
paint.
I find that if you actually are an artist and it's a way of life, meaning that sort of naturally emerges that sometimes when you're continuously working on different scales of projects, when you are met with those limitations, you can find your way to and sometimes the more spontaneous and quickly the piece is, sometimes it turns out to be the better piece. But so you've always had that lifeline with art in some way. When did it transition to film?
Um, it was a slow transition. I went to college like a lot of people. I'm like, I'm gonna major in art, and I did that. And I went to a big university, and I kind of got lost in taking all these classes and be like a lecture hall of 200 students. It wasn't helping me.
Was it
And I
both
did take
being an artist and art criticism? Was it sort of both?
it was yeah, I mean, I had to
Or
take art
history?
history
Yeah.
classes, and I remember an art history class on like African art. It was like just literally an inventory of pieces that aren't really art, but more like part of a culture and part of a tribe, and just like memorizing all of it. And I just to me that wasn't that wasn't speaking to my soul. you
Right.
know um so I kind of was lost for a while. Then I went to school thinking maybe I should be a graphic designer. It's that struggle when you're young. You're like, I need to make money.
Right.
This is my passion, but I need to make money. I need to degree to make money. So it was really like, as I just kind of never really settled on any one university, um but always drew and painted and was interested in movies. So I kind of discovered Columbia College in Chicago, and was like, I was discovering underground films and indie films and the stuff that was
What kind of
happening.
films were you into before you discovered the underground? What kind of films did you like? Or best
I
film?
mean, as a kid, I grew up in the 70s as a
Hmm.
child, so it was like the films. It's a weird combination. So there's like movies I saw as a child in Iowa City, where I grew up, in like the movie theater. So movies like Star Wars or The Wiz, I remember those. But it was mostly, I think, living in the Middle East and watching movies on video.
So
Um,
how old were you? How much time did you spend? You were born in Iraq, and
mhm.
how much time did you spend in the Middle East at that time?
I mean, we came to Iowa City. I was around 4,
Okay.
and then we went back like around third grade.
Okay.
Um, and then war started in Iraq, and so we fled to Saudi Arabia. And it was in Saudi Arabia where I just nonstop started watching movies.
And how old were
Because
you?
I was 10.
Okay. Keep going.
So some of the it also depended on what I had access to. So definitely like films like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, I just would watch over and over. The Exorcist was another one. Um, and didn't really think of films as something that was artistic until
Right.
later. So like when I was later in my 20s, there was a video store that had kind of a cult weirdo section,
Hmm.
and I was watching movies by John Waters and finding things from Film Thread and Nick Zed and Richard Kern and Lydia Lunch. And I was by then already listening to a lot of punk and fucked up music. So that all fit. And I think what inspired me about the cinema of transgression work and other like independent filmmakers, even like early Hal Hartley movies, that just felt really indie and small, um, is I thought, oh, I could do this. Like this is the films of Richard Kern. They like some of those people look like my friends, and there was just this wild energy to it. And I had not been exposed to experimental films or anything. Like I never studied film. So by the time I went to film school, I felt like an oddball because you know, there'd be all these like film nerds who like watched every Hitchcock film, and these guys that can quote like
They're the
lines
worst.
all
Yeah.
day, and you know, every you know Tarantino's movies were coming out, and I was just like rolling my eyes because it's just every dude was just
Yeah.
wanted to be Tarantino or something, and
I
I don't
always
know.
loved the movies, and then I would watch like, you know, Bruce Lee movies, or like I'd
Oh
watch
yeah, Bruce
Billy
Lee.
Jack. You
Yeah,
know, I grew up in 1962. You grew up in, I mean, I was born in 62. You were born in 69, right? But the
yeah,
70s were like an excellent time to see films, and my father would take me to R-rated films because we were doing karate, my brother and I, and so we got to see Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee and John
God,
Saxon,
so good.
and
Yeah,
like, what is it, Jim Kelly? No, that's not Jim Kelly. Who's the other? I don't know. Is it Jim Kelly? Whatever. So we saw Enter the Dragon because we were doing karate, and that was R-rated. And then and I really got into films, and so when like I heard older kids talking about Cuckoo's Nest, I
oh
was like,
yeah,
Dad, I want to go see that, but it's R-rated. And I was like, well, so was Enter the Dragon, so it got me in. And I saw Dog Day Afternoon. So
God,
these
that's
like,
another one.
and
Yeah,
but and so and then when I saw 2001, and I saw like the poetry of and I saw cinema, I guess they call it, instead
yeah,
of like movies. Then it was like there was this elevation with how the pure the visual image. And then when I a little older in my teens, I was shown some avant-garde films from some local filmmakers in Maine, and they showed me Meshes of the Afternoon, and I was
mm,
like, like 17 or whatever, and I was like, wow, you can do this really heavy stuff with one camera and two people. And I
yeah.
had that same aha moment where like I can do this, and we can make these small personal things and make powerful statements and have that ambiguity and have that complexity that a Meshes of the Afternoon. It's like the best student film. But I think there's that moment when you're like, I can do this with my friends and a camera. And I think that's probably where so you're in film
Yeah,
school.
yeah.
There's all these nerds. Go from there.
No, I mean great. I mean great
Oh
nerds.
yeah.
I mean you want that energy. I just didn't. I had just never. I had not seen so many movies. I mean, I
Right.
couldn't compete. And I was, you know, it was Chicago. It was the '90s, and it was like a time when bands, like really amazing bands, were playing there all the time. And you know, labels like Skin Graft and Drag City and Touch and Go and all the bands associated like that. So I was fascinated with music and live shows. I also was reading quite a bit. I mean, I didn't own a TV set,
What were
so
you reading?
oh god, you know, like a lot of Henry Miller, George Bataille, J.G. Ballard, Anais Nin,
Okay.
and a lot of the beat stuff. Anything obscure I was into, and you know, guys like Milan Kundera, um, and so I was interested in like certain themes and storylines, and you know, my Columbia College really emphasized more of a narrative structure. Like you write a script, you cast it, and that I like that training. I actually appreciated it, and we were kind of there was like this I don't know mild competition with the Art Institute, Chicago Art Institute, because they were more experimental and avant-garde, and we were seeing Columbia as more kind of practical and industrious. But towards the end of my college time, we started getting more teachers and professors that were showing, you know, more avant-garde and experimental work. Like even someone like Jennifer Reeder started to teach there and bringing that in. Um, but I never felt like I was never um, so deep into film that it's something I always wanted to do. It's sort of something I came across, and in many ways, I think that helped me. Is I didn't have any preconceived notions. I always thought I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to show my paintings in galleries and museums, and I had a little bit of that in my 20s, but it was just a world I didn't really feel I could get into, or it just felt closed off to me. And so
Well,
when I started making,
I think that's good if you have like different disciplines and different interests. Then you can bring something to film that's not films about films, because it gets a little too much like that. Like I remember even being in film school and like going like, look, we're just making films that are based on our being in a theater watching a film rather than having a real experience. So I think, but that's the great thing about film, is that it involves, you know, theater and music and painting and all these other disciplines. And I think the more rounded you are, the richer your work can be. You know, I mean, Tarantino's made a brilliant career out of making films about films and doing all those references, and even the biggest people steal almost directly. But I think it's actually a good thing for people to come from different disciplines. Can you? I have. It's you. You've got the floor.
No, yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think, I mean, I think also coming from Iraq and living in the Middle East, I started to bring some of those things into it, and I knew that it was like foreign to people. Like, what are you doing? Like a film like Dance Habibi Dance, I think is a good example, because it's me leaving. It's like the first year out of film school, and I'm just almost fed up with like how films should be, because I tried to make this sort of indie style film as my thesis film, and I shot it and I never edited it, and it was kind of like a nervous breakdown. I did everything right, and then I left it going, I don't want to make films like this.
Yeah,
you know,
I've had
like
that
a
experience
script and
too. Yeah,
lines and acting and sing, and I was like, I don't want to sync sound right now. I want to hold the Bolex and be free.
yeah,
I want to bring in people that I like and do things and have go-go dancers and
yeah,
have like Middle Eastern pop music that's like hip hop-ish, and I wanted it to be weird and perverse, and I wanted to see something that wasn't out there.
yeah. No, I love
Like
that.
no one is making that.
I love
So
that,
I
and I
made
think,
it.
yeah, and the
Yeah.
underground film festivals give us that opportunity to bring in something from the outside, to come in and yeah, blow my mind, yeah, freak me out, you know,
Yeah,
unsettle
that's
me.
exactly it. And that was so I sent it to Chicago Underground and New York Underground, and I went to both festivals. I was like, oh, I belong here.
Right, and I think that was the year I met you, right? I met
Yeah,
you
he's
that
like,
year.
I think,
Yeah,
yeah, I met you in New York Underground. So that
yeah, in
was
1998, maybe
99. Oh
99.
no,
Okay,
you come to Chicago?
I did come to Chicago
Yeah.
because I
So
met
we
Mark Hayner at New York, and then he said, you know, submit to Chicago. So I probably met you in Chicago in 98 or
Yeah, I mean, it
99.
was our tradition. You would come every year and we would drink as much alcohol as we could, and then end up at a diner at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Um, and that was
Until,
our routine.
yeah. Uh, but, uh, but,
But yeah, I
yeah,
mean, you know how it is, Carrie. It's like you grow up and you think movies are only one way, which is like Hollywood, and they have to be big and that. And but I'm glad you mentioned guys like Bruce Lee and stuff, because those movies in the '70s were so important. Even Dog Day Afternoon. And I was, it's funny you were talking about like watching R movies when you're a kid. My parents, my dad especially, didn't care. I mean,
okay.
I was 10. We started watching The Exorcist. My family was like, "This is too much." So they all left, and I just sat in the dark watching it by myself, and
Yeah, because
definitely obscured it.
there was the theater, and like you weren't allowed in the theater without a parent or guardian, especially with
That's
an
right.
R film. So I'd bring my father along. So we watched Dog Day Afternoon, and him
Yeah,
see these you know this crazy bank robber who is trying to steal money from this bank to get a sex change operation for the woman, the man, the
yeah, his
transsexual man
girlfriend.
who he loves. And it's this insane story. And my father just was, God bless him. He sat there and also going through seeing like Cuckoo's Nest, and how
Oh yeah,
how intense that is too,
yeah.
and all that stuff. And I was so grateful for him to bring me along, because it wasn't a video cassette. You'd have to actually go to the theater. But and I was obsessed with A Clockwork Orange, and my mother was like, "No effing way are you seeing that film? You know, that was forbidden." So I wanted to see it most of
I
all.
know, right when they say forbidden, then it's
And then I would, you know, I was obsessed with Kubrick, and I'd say and I'd read about Lolita, and I went to my mother and I said, "What's Lolita about?" And she was like, "It's about an old man who likes a young girl to sit on his lap." And I was like, "Okay, what does that mean?" And I also had read this autobiography of a hitman, and the first line of it is "fuck the Godfather" or whatever, and he talks about seeing deep throat, and that it's about a
mm,
woman's clitoris being 6 inches down her throat or whatever. So I asked my junior high school teacher what a clitoris was, and I don't know. I guess no, I think it was a man. I asked, and I looked it up in the dictionary, and I still didn't know what it was.
mm.
But you know, these things are all a click away, I guess, for kids or whatever.
Yeah,
And
and you're, I mean, it's interesting because you're bringing up movie theaters. So videotapes came to the Middle East and Asia before they hit the United States.
wow, yeah,
As early as early 80s, we had them
okay,
fully, and it was all Betamax. Um, and so that came later, the United States. So, and also there's no, like, copyright stuff is all out the window. So we could get anything. And so I watched all these things mostly on video, and then later would go to movies once I was an adult living in the United States again. Um, and Chicago was great for that because they would do like there'd be theaters that would bring back old movies like Vertigo, and they'd be a new print, or even that Japanese movie House. You know, I went and saw it for the first time on 35 millimeter print. Like the music box was good for that. But I think it was those early days of just video cassettes. Even when I was in high school, my friend Steve Stawali, he'd rent like Eraserhead and Forbidden Zone and like films like that, and Polyester. And I was like, oh my God. And there was a university theater, and they would play Indian foreign movies, and that's like I remember seeing Repo Man the first time, um, which is hilarious because when I went back to grad school, Alex Cox ended up being my advisor and professor.
yeah,
Uh,
like Repo Man. It was such a there's so many indie films that just kind of ripped his off. Maybe I'm imagining that, but I think it was a groundbreaking kind of films that you could do in the, I don't know. I just thought it was an amazing movie, and Walker's strong too. I haven't seen it recently, but I mean, can I go back to what
yeah, go
did you
back.
make after Dance Habibi Dance?
I mean, I continued making shorts and experimenting with that. Um, you know, a lot of my stuff, I think, definitely my interest in sex and um, dancing and movement and just kind of more psychedelic approach to filmmaking that continued. A lot of shorts I made, and just, you know, I really love my short films because they can just be like this gesture or just this. I just have a feeling, and I've never been trained as a proper artist. Like I don't have like this thesis statement and like everything returns to it. I just played and tried many things, and shorts were good for that because you can do so much. Um,
They're almost like sketches, I guess, in a
yeah,
way. Yeah.
yeah. And I got to a point in Chicago where like almost everything I made got shown. So I would make a film. I'm like, this is gonna like I was aware of the audience.
Yeah, I had a string of four in a row in Chicago until I shit where I ate. But some of your films are disturbing or unsettling, and I like that. I like um, being disturbed. That's one of the reasons I was drawn to the underground. Because I ultimately think the theater is a safe space. But how are those? Have you gotten any blowback now with the new? And how I haven't been to an underground film festival in a long time. The last I really spent was in Boston. They were
Mhm.
the last to show love. And how are things? What's the screening now? Or has
Well, I do. I mean, one thing though is you're bringing up the short films. I mean, those are definitely important. But I think another thing that's equally as important is that as I was exploring all these themes, you know, 9/11 happened, and so I really started getting into filmmaking and playing at underground film festivals and other film festivals around '98. and going up. So the 2000s were my career, all of it. So 2001 hit 9/11, and that just shifted everything for me.
Yeah, I put it as history fell in Osama's lap.
Yeah, that's right.
It was like, I mean, you can't ignore it. You gotta like.
Right. It was perfect timing. And then, I immediately made a film called Mohammed and Jane. And I had been working with Piotr Czachowski for a while. He was a Polish guy. And many of my friends, like being in Chicago was so nice because many of my friends were immigrants or from other parts of the world or were just non-white people. I just had a great diverse friends, and Piotr was one of them, and he was also a filmmaker, and we went to school together. I made Mohammed and Jane, which was definitely about what was happening. And that's interesting because that was, even though it was fiction, everything, the way I shot it was like a documentary almost. I mean, there was an anti-war protest against the invasion of Iraq. And as I was making that film, there was a buildup to go to war to Iraq. And then we did go to war to Iraq, and I was, I got married. I was in my honeymoon in Amsterdam when the United States invaded Iraq.
Wow.
And I had my camera, and there was another protest, anti-war protest, and I shot that. And then my wife at the time, Christy, I said, we should go to Iraq. And that film, Nice Bomb,
What was her answer? What was her answer? Did she
like, all right, yeah.
Okay.
No, she was into it. We rewrote our wills. And,
oh, really? Seriously?
Yeah. Well, Baghdad was the most dangerous city at the time.
Right.
The chances of us getting killed were pretty high. Like that wasn't.
Yeah.
Like you don't go into a war zone 9 months after an invasion and think I'll be fine.
Yeah,
like,
and a few days after your wedding, right? Or you were on your honeymoon, you said, in Amsterdam?
We were on our honeymoon when the war started.
Okay.
It was a good 9 months, and then we left after. So the war started in early 2003, and we left. Oh no, the war started. Yeah, the war started in. I don't remember, but we left about 9 months after the invasion.
Okay.
So it hadn't even been a year.
I'm sleep deprived. All right, so you guys filled out you filled out your wills and you went to Iraq. What happened then? And you brought your camera, right?
Well, yeah, I was going to make a documentary. I'm not just going to go there, take notes. We were there for almost 3 weeks. I went with my dad, and I made Nice Bombs, and that film changed my life completely because it still played at a bunch of underground festivals, but it also played it at some other festivals, and it got picked up by the Sundance Channel, and it got a broadcast premiere. It even had a short theatrical run in New York and Chicago. But just like the press was different, and I think it was more accessible, and it was political. It was something global that was happening. And not a lot of people had gone into Iraq and made work like that, or most of the footage that we were seeing was through the military. And I was, some of my best work comes out of like anger or frustration. I'm like, fuck that. I'm going to
me
do
too.
something about this,
Yeah, me too. And that was the underground. And then it became, it sort of, it got dispersed into something historical, but then you could bring that edge to something that was real and affected the globe, if that makes any sense. I mean, as far as the spiritual kind of like, okay, I want to be on the edge, and usually mine are about my personal struggles and so forth. And, but kind of, as I said,
that's a great point. I mean, I think, and there's something about like the angst and, talking about the edge and.
Well, it gives you courage too. I mean, if anger can motivate you to move forward as long as you know how to, temper it and channel it in a productive way, and I think film is a great way to do it. But I interrupted you. Keep going.
No. I was just kind of just realized that. I mean, we were both heavy drinkers back then.
Yeah, I'll be sober 14 years in August. I don't know about yourself.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going on 6 years sober.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So, but some of that angst and attitude, there's a little bit of self-destruction in there,
Mm-hmm.
And instead of being like sitting in some dive bar in Chicago and drinking, I was like, you know what? I'm always taking risks. Let me use this wild energy and take a big risk
Right.
and do something with all of this energy I have and a little bit of this angsty attitude. Like, I wanted to do something big. I was 33
Good
and
age.
yeah, and I was like, either I do this and make it and everything will change, or I do it and I don't make it, but I got to try something.
Yeah.
Like whatever was happening wasn't working for me. I was depressed. I needed it
Hmm.
in a big way.
Do you know the movie Bad Day at Black Rock?
Mm-mm.
It's an amazing movie with Spencer Tracy, and he's a wounded vet, World War II, comes back to this town, and everybody in the town is giving him shit, and he's trying to find this guy, and it's a Japanese American, and they're like, Lee Marvin plays a heavy in it, Ernest Borgnine, and he goes in, he gets all this shit, and he realizes that this town has killed this Japanese American because of the war, and Spencer Tracy, he was he I think it was this guy's son had like saved him in the war, and he wanted to get, and he died in the war, the Japanese Americans like son, I think, and he had a medal and he was going to give it to his father or something like that. He was going to, but actually what happened is that Spencer Tracy's character was depressed and suicidal when he went in. He was going to do this one thing and give this medal to the father of, I might have the details wrong, but he wanted to do this one noble thing and
Yeah.
then go kill himself.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
place where he was, where it's like he's willing to die but self-destructively, it gave him the courage to fight these racist townspeople who had killed this innocent guy because he was a Japanese American, and there was all this anti-Japanese
Yeah.
fever before and after the war. And he does this heroic thing. He takes that his I don't want to live becomes I'm fearless and I'm not afraid to die. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
I'm lack of sleep, but it's a great movie. Robert Ryan is in it, and he was a big liberal left wing guy politically, but he liked to play bad guys in movies. He's also in
Mm.
Crossfire, which is
Mm.
deals with anti-Semitism and stuff.
Mm.
But Bad Day at Black Rock has that. I just think it's fascinating. He goes in, he's gonna like do this thing and then commit suicide, and the fact that he isn't afraid to die and maybe wants to die gives him the courage to sort of fight these people, because he's only has one arm, but whatever.
It's freeing. There's a freedom in it. And it's, I guess it's taking some of that self-destructive energy and saying, well, what can I do with
Yeah, it can
this?
be heroic. It can help
Yeah.
others. It's sort of like this negative can be flipped around to a positive under the right circumstances. But continue.
It's yeah, no, I think no, I mean, I think to make films, to do anything, like really we shouldn't do anything. Like what is the point of this? Like there's really no reason to
I mean,
do
as far as
anything.
artistic
Anything.
endeavors,
I mean,
anything.
really, if you dig down deep into really understanding life, there's very little point. We have to kind of create meaning. I
But
mean, to
Osama,
do
you have a
something.
child
I
now.
know
That
now
must
I
have
do.
changed.
No, no,
Can't,
I don't know.
you can't feel that way anymore. I'm supposed to feel that way. I'm barren. Yeah. No, but I
Yeah,
know
I
what you
have a
mean.
child. Well,
How's that changed your life? Did that change your life?
I wanted a child because my life was meaningless.
Okay.
I mean, it was a kind of existentialist crisis where I'm like,
Okay.
there is no God.
Okay.
What is the point of all this?
I'm hearing you. Yeah.
And yeah, I wanted to bring a little person and raise her.
Yeah.
But no, I think
She was beautiful last time I checked. But yeah, keep going.
yeah, no, she's doing good.
Beautiful.
I think what I'm trying to get at is that I remember reading about Pablo Picasso, and I saw Pablo Picasso's drawing to get into, the Paris Art School, whatever. And it was a nude drawing of his dad, and I was like, fascinated that his father posed for him, like fully nude, like cock and everything, you know. Um, and then I immediately like remembered the one time we were at a Turkish swimming pool with my dad, and I saw him shower naked, and I was like, could I draw him? But it wasn't so much that; it was more like Picasso's devotion, and just like his father's like, you will draw me, and you will, you know, and that I like that. And then sort of like the whole idea of like Picasso or artist in general, that you're kind of have this gift or this talent and you should do something with it. And maybe I had this romantic notion of myself, probably delusional, but that I had this talent or this gift and that people wanted to see it. And so in combination with this sort of self demeaning attitude or not feeling optimistic about life, I also had this really romantic notion that I was like infused with like God, and I had this like like
mission.
I was touched. You know, when I was when you know, when Saudi Arabia is a very religious place and people are always like Allah and like Muhammad this, Muhammad, listen to Muhammad. I was like, you know, most people would be like, I need to follow the Quran. I was like, maybe I'm a prophet. You know, like not
No, I mean, I identify with the same thing. I'm just like, where I would be like, this idea, you know, I'd come up with an idea, come up with that sucks. I'd come up with this, that sucks, that sucks. And I'd get to a point where I was like, I don't care if it sucks. I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Some part of me just was like, and it was because I loved what I'd seen from other films, and that I'd felt safest and most elated, you know, before drinking, in the theater. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't drink till I was in college, and I had, and NYU was like, no, it's not going to happen. Your ideas are too weird and esoteric. But before then, I felt safest and most elated in the theater, and I felt there was this hope. I felt like there was this. I would just be like, this is the coolest thing, and I want to be part of this. And even if I don't measure up, I can't do nothing. I can't. Let me make a piece of shit. I've had moments. Well, I think writer's block is not that I don't have any ideas. I just think they suck.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I realized I had rules. And once I said, okay, I can change those rules, and then I can get that engine going. And I mean, it reminds me of the film that, you know, you had all this preparation, and then you're like, and even at that point in college where you're like, I don't want to make this narrative thing, or I've written this script and I don't feel engaged in it. I had that same idea. Like, I would write a script that would, I knew what NYU wanted. NYU wanted after school specials, and they wanted like moments of adolescent, you know, coming of age. And I was like, and I had a roommate who was from Chicago, and and Donahue was one of my heroes, you know, Mr. Rogers, Donahue, you know, he would go on and talk to the audience. It was before
Phil Donahue.
Yeah, Phil Donahue.
I love Phil Donahue.
Yeah, before the talk show became the circus, it was kind of a cool place. It was like a little bit of PBS in like commercial television, and it was great. He had like atheists on. He had like craziest stuff,
and he'd like run with a microphone. I met him, by the way.
He's great. And so I was like, and then my friend said he knew Phil's kids, and they were a mess. And I was like, I've got this great idea, and NYU is gonna love it. I've got this guy who's a crisis counselor on TV, and he solves everybody's problems, you know, but he can't solve his own son's problems, and it's not gonna work. And then there's this whole thing of the TV, and he's battling his son, and I'm like, they're gonna eat this up. You know, he can save the world, but he can't save his own son. After school, and I was like, they'd love it, but I'm not in. It's like, somebody else make this film. I'm like, I wanted to make a Jack Chick comic, you know, which is like somebody goofed, where these little religious tracks where you're like, you know, it's this draconian, like, if you don't accept Christ as your personal savior, I don't care how good a person you are, you're going to hell, and you're going to meet Satan in hell. And it's like, and I was like, and I pitched it to my NYU class, and they were all like glazed eyes. And I was like, I don't want anybody in the audience to I want them to not know whether I'm a believer or not, whether I believe in this
Mm,
and I want them to feel
mhm,
unsettled. And they
mhm,
were like, why would we want that to happen? And I
mhm,
was crestfallen and I started to do music instead. But what
mm,
was good is that The Rapture came out, this Michael Tolkin movie, which is kind of like that.
mm,
And somebody did make an animated film of Somebody Goofed. And I think the films of Todd Solondz
mm,
reflect the kind of like when I was in the shit of depression and I
mhm.
wanted to make a movie about like some horrible thing like incest or something and make it so like he did that. And
Mhm,
instead of being like, oh, why wasn't it me? I was like, I'm
mhm.
glad he's
Someone did
there.
it.
I'm glad
Yeah,
someone did it. And I
yeah.
think and I didn't have I was in the deep throes of depression. And when I did see those Richard Kern films and Nick Zed films, I was like, when I get my shit together,
Mhm,
when I get functional, I want to
mhm,
make something like this and I
mhm,
want it to be tougher. And
mhm,
I identify with that being able to express that frustration and anger within a film
mhm,
and then I just made these two films and then I found a flyer for the New York Underground Film Festival and it was the submission date hadn't passed, so I entered it
mm,
and it got in, and that
mm,
led me to the community of the underground, and that's how I met you.
mhm.
um and it was after like a breakup, and it was after like a breakup and I was
Mhm,
hospitalized and I was like, fuck it, I don't care, I'm going to
mhm,
start making films like I made him as a kid
mhm,
with whatever I have.
mhm.
And that was my journey.
Yeah, I think I think that's the key word, the fuck it.
Yeah.
I think there's this thing in like being in America, like we go to high school and we do well and we sort of figure out who we are, and then we decide what we're going to major in, and we go to college and we do well, and then we get a job, and like at some point, if that's not working for you and you're young and you can't pay rent and you're fucked up and you're whatever drugs you're on or drinking too much, you start to believe that it's over for you and that there's like you have no hope, there's no future. And again, like you and I both could have easily ended up dead, but we didn't. I mean, I'm sure you had friends, I definitely have friends that did end up dead or got into harder drugs and just things didn't work out or in prison, whatever. And like I didn't have this like academic career or this life where things were pleasant. Just everything was hard for me. And I didn't know how to get along with people. I didn't know how to present myself professionally. I remember when I was trying to put it together for some film festival, someone's like, "Do you write a press release?" I'm like, "What's that?" You know? Or just like marketing my films. I was like, "I guess I'll make a flyer," you know? Um,
But that was great about punk rock and the underground film festivals, that there's a place for we misfits and like we're just gonna make some shit. We don't know what it is. Because I made two of those films with no knowledge of a film festival. I was just
that's
like,
right.
these need to be made, and I
That's
don't
right.
care, and I'm gonna make them the way I'm 30 or whatever, and I'm like, I don't care. I'm gonna make and the grown up world says you are too weird,
That's
and
right.
I'm like, no one's gonna watch your. So I was like, I'm just gonna make them the way I did when I was a kid, which is
That's
just
right.
like you get your friends, you put them in front of a camera, you get some props, and you do some
That's
double
right.
expose, and you put some blood on them, and you have a dildo, and then you make a film.
Right.
Because I made this John Wayne Gacy film because
Hmm.
at NYU the teacher said make something ugly beautiful or make something beautiful ugly, and I was like, well, I'll make a serial killer beautiful. And my Chicago roommate was like, no, you gotta, I picked one serial killer or whatever, and he said, no, Gacy, and I never heard of Gacy. It was like
Yeah.
he's a Chicago film. And so I made this like John Wayne Gacy film where he was like, because he was the most prolific at that point.
Yeah.
And and I had this, yeah, Osmond soundtrack, Sweet and Innocent, and just having him, his horrendous killing young boys and so forth, and people and the audience, and and I showed it to my class, and they're all laughing until they see the victims, and then they start feeling sick.
Mm.
And those weren't really the victims. I just randomly took pictures of people in a yearbook, and I lost that film, in
Oh,
transit.
really?
And so years later, when I'd had that crash and hospitalization and I wanted to make films again, I said, I'm going to remake that film. And I made it with dolls about Richard Chase. And the same thing happened. And actually, I didn't think that film was going to, in the middle of making that film, I'd storyboarded the whole thing and I showed it to someone at, at a bar in New York, and they were horrified. They were like, they were really disturbed. And I stopped making the film in the middle because I got depressed. I was like, no one's going to watch this. And I said, well, it's all academic now. Now it's all just grunt work now. It's all been storyboarded. I know what to do. I have the sets, and I just finished it. And then I got it into that film festival, not even knowing that it would be in a film festival. And then when I sat with an audience, they were totally like sucked in. And then the punch at the end, first they're laughing about this horror, and then suddenly they're horrified, and then they have to look at their own. And I was like, it made an impact and bigger than I thought. And it was great to be in that disconnect of like, this is not going to work. And then you see it with an audience, and it might actually work. But
Yeah, that's fascinating. And it's funny because like I don't think people realize how hard it was to make a film back then.
yeah,
I
this is
mean,
16 millimeter, and it was
yeah,
expensive too.
yeah, everything. I mean, shooting on 16. It's interesting because when I started playing, I convinced a friend to buy me a 3-chip Sony mini DV camera. That was all.
That
That was
was
the
the
best
top
thing you could
notch.
get at the
Yeah.
time. And I am so grateful for my buddy Tom Gilbert for buying me the camera. I mean, I paid him back. I let him stay at my place, this shitty little house, and I I'm so grateful for that because I just kept shooting and shooting and shooting, and I figured out how to edit on Premiere, which was there was no Final Cut back then. It was just Premiere, and I got like an illegal copy, and actually even before that, I didn't even have a fucking computer. I would go over to my friend Peter Hartel's basement, and while him and his family was sleeping, I would edit all night because he just let me edit downstairs, and there was a bathroom. And one of the experiments in that was a movie made called Muffin, and it was like this short movie, and I was like had this like loose script, and the guy actor that was supposed to show up never showed up, and my friend again Piotr, who's going to help me with lighting, he's like, I will play it. And I shot the film in one night. I edited it in one night. And there were technical things that I didn't understand where like the video wasn't totally processed. So it was doing this weird jumpy thing, but I was like, it's fine. And exported it onto tape. And I sent it to a couple of festivals, and I got in, and I remember sitting in a movie theater, and someone came up to me afterwards, and he's like, that scared the shit out of me. Like, what is that? And there's something about being in the movie, like being in the movie theater and feeling the audience.
Yeah.
And then also just kind of like trusting when you're alone that your instincts, like editing is such a weird thing. Like, why make this cut and not that cut? Especially the kind of work we do. It's not very logical, right?
Right.
And I just remember that gesture sort of similar to like doing something like drawing by yourself, or being by yourself. And you mentioned it earlier about kind of like not coming from a film world, but coming from a world where to deal with my shit, my problems, my stuff. I mean, I grew up through war. I was this migrant kid going back and forth, that it was necessary. Like I had no choice but to make art, to make movies. Like there was nothing else I could imagine doing. And I mean, not to like be like, oh, we really toughed it out, but I mean, there'd be months I couldn't pay rent, I couldn't buy food, or I would just be like, okay, I got $400, I'm going to put it all into this film because I have to.
Yeah, it's part of because I have given up doing both film and music many times, and claimed I was not an artist, to a teacher or whatever, who's like, write about being an artist. And I was like, I'm not an artist. I'm just a wannabe. I'm just somebody who likes something and says, maybe I can do that. I'm monkey see, monkey do. I'm just imitating my heroes. But then when I find when I've stopped, when I was like, I suck, or this is just vanity, or like, who cares? And then I'll end up making something. I'm like, meaning once I've had the, 'cause sometimes I'll be like, oh, I'll write some verse, and I'm like, okay, I can make a song out of it, or I'll start shooting and then I'll edit it together, and suddenly something will be made, even if it's a sketch or something. And I guess I'm just saying, then I realize, okay, it is part of me processing my consciousness, or it feeds some invisible need of like, either I'm here on earth, or I need to say this, or I love the process, or I don't know, I love working with these materials. Does that make any sense, or am I off
Yeah,
the
it makes
mark?
sense. I think, it's funny that we're talking about this right now during, as we are leaving the pandemic, because that feeling of being young and alone and being like these visions coming to you,
Right.
um, it's also, I think, setting the bar really low. I mean, filmmaking is this highly complex, super expensive, life changing, really painful. I mean, production's really not easy. And
That's why I just work single-handedly.
right, right. But when you want to make bigger films
Right.
and you have these expectations, it's a lot of fucking work.
Yeah.
It's not a normal life. Like a filmmaker, if you're an active filmmaker, you don't have a normal life.
And it's a
And
headache and a headache, and it's problem solving over and over again. It's like making do with the circumstances.
yeah, and when people invite me to like a park or go out, I'm always like, this would make a good set.
Right.
Cameras here. Or I meet someone, I'm like, who are you? What do you do? You got a great face. And that's the thing. I was always like casting. I'd go out,
Yeah.
drink, and be like, you got to be in my film.
I
Give me your
love
number.
reading. I love reading about Alejandro Jodorowsky. I had that El Topo book before I ever saw the movie, and I was obsessed with it. I went up to them and I said, "I will make a film with you," and I did that too. This guy Chet just looked remarkable, and I said, "I'm going to make a film with you."
That's right.
And then we did, and he was like, "This is the story of my life." But keep going.
No, just that. Yeah, even during the pandemic, I was like, well, I can't make the movie I thought I was going to make. And I think it's those bursts that provoke other forms of like creativity.
Yeah.
Out of frustration,
Yeah.
out of the inability to do one thing, the ideal, like this is the ideal
Right.
that we have. And then we're like, fuck, I can't, that's fucked. I can't do that.
Right.
But what do I have?
And then it's like, yeah, fuck it. I'm going to do it anyway, by whatever means. Yeah.
By whatever means. And then like I watch films.
We're not heroic too. This is just like a miracle of like, I don't know. I think of Jean Genet. I tell this story all the time. He's, was abandoned by his prostitute mother at like 8 months or whatever. He sort of had the same upbringing as Manson. Manson went the wrong way, and he's a thief, and he's an artist, and he's a poet, and he's in prison all the time, and he's probably never going to get out. But he's writing his novel, and then secretly on paper, bags of paper with pencil, and the guards come in, they see the manuscript, they throw it away. He starts from the beginning, keeps writing, and it finally is finished, and it gets in the hands of Jean Cocteau or the intelligentsia of Paris or whatever. And they say, this guy's a genius. And he's gay, and he's got this twisted way of looking at the world. He's a complete freak, but he has to write this novel. He's an artist, and he actually writes himself out of prison. They petition for him to get out of prison. He never comes back to prison. He writes brilliant plays and books, and influences like one of my heroes, John Waters, and
Jean Genet.
And Jean Genet's story is just like the miracle of like the cement and like the flower coming up from within the cement, meaning that in the worst conditions, sometimes something brilliant can come out there that can open this whole new world. I mean, not to mention that he's kind of an LGBTQ hero, to my mind, but he's also kind of a freak, but he's a freak who actually turned things around. And there's a great hope in that. I don't know if that makes sense.
What was that early film with Todd Haynes?
Yeah, Poison.
Poison was brilliant.
Yeah.
Because I was going out with someone that was going to Brown University, and I was just living in her dorm room. And so I'd go to her like film lectures, and Todd Haynes and Annie Sprinkle came to give a talk.
Okay.
But yeah, I saw that film, and I had read Jean Genet, and I remember those segments with Jean Genet, the way he cut it up. Yeah, Jean Genet was a huge influence, I think, on subculture
Yeah,
and
exactly.
a lot of the movements that came after.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, but I hear what you're saying. Like, you know,
Because
I
even
think
like
there's
hip hop, like the Bronx was like freaking bombed out. I was working at the MTA, and there's this kid, and he lives in the Bronx. He saw the footage from the '70s where there's like no buildings. It's like a bombed out place, and something as brilliant as like hip hop is birthed in kind of this desert. And like
that's right.
the creative spirit, like, and they make do with what they've got. And I think there's a great hope in that
I
in the
think
midst
so.
of. So I'm
I think so, and
on my soapbox.
no, stay on your soapbox. And I think, and one of the things I wanted to say about video is, as I was playing with video and shooting on video, and now everything's shot on video. But again, like going back to the film snobs, they're like, "Oh, Summer, what are you working on?" I'm working on a feature, and immediately, what's the first thing they ask?
Is it on
Film or
film? Yeah.
video?
I was one of those.
And I go video, and they're like, they leave the room. Fuck you. And actually, I'm glad I made so many films on video and kept doing it, because I learned how to shoot, and I found my way, and people watched it and people forgot, and it didn't fucking matter. And
Yeah.
now,
I think it's
ironically,
nostalgic now. They love the
people
look.
like are
Yeah.
buying mini DV cameras and like shooting on it, and
Yeah.
and they're like, "Oh, it's vintage."
Because I think a lot of times it's not necessarily like, oh, my favorite film is blah blah blah. It's like, no, it's not the greatest film. It's because you saw it when you were 13 or whatever.
That's
You
right.
saw it,
That's
and like
right.
you looked at these video things where you're at a certain age where you're receptive,
Yeah.
and it hits you on a deeper level.
Yeah.
And I'm nostalgic for the look of video too. What are you up to these days?
So these
Okay.
days,
Yeah.
yeah. So these days, so I've been shooting a film again, like as a pandemic. I divorced. I had to move, and I moved into this new house that has a nice like backyard. It's very forest-like.
You can shoot Last House on the left.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and this house is built in 1955, and it has kind of a Hitchcockian vibe, and we get these black ants everywhere, and I jokingly call it the Kafka house, but it has a vibe. The house has a vibe, and during the lockdown, I've been really fascinated by kind of the horror genre as a shell to like tell other things, but I love the horror genre as a model. And so I started basically shooting this kind of horror movie and about someone trying to enter my house, which is a real thing. I have these like home invasion dreams and nightmares. I've always had these sort of horror nightmare freakouts where someone's in the room or I think someone's trying to get in.
Yeah.
And kind of expanded on that. And it all was triggered while I was walking around that night, and I thought someone was walking towards me outside. I was like, what the fuck? I'm going to call 911. And I realized it was me. It was my
reflection in the glass.
I thought this is like a really good metaphor for fucking everything that I'm going through.
I mean, I think of Meshes of the Afternoon as being
again,
for me,
Meshes,
but now it's like it's probably overseen, and I saw it with the soundtrack that her later husband did,
right. Yeah,
which is just I can only see it with that soundtrack. I know there's all kinds of weird versions on YouTube.
No, it was the one. Yeah, they did a soundtrack for it. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Right.
But
she's interesting. I'll go back and finish what I was talking about my film.
Okay,
I'm glad you keep bringing up Meshes of the Afternoon, because I actually teach it now. When I first saw it, I kind of dismissed it and rolled my eyes because I was like, this is a cliche. I've seen this a million times. What I didn't realize, it was the original. Everyone else had been copying it.
Right.
And then I kind of read more about her and saw it again. I was like, oh, this is fucking genius. Like, this is incredible.
I mean, the
This
context
is
she
like,
was in, she was a complete freak, and like her,
yeah.
even her down to her hairstyle was like, and even like Dylan Thomas drunkenly like insulted her or whatever. But it's like, thank God she's there.
I mean, there's
I
certain films, like
I was
avant-garde
introduced.
films.
Yeah, I was
Just real quick,
introduced in
go
that
ahead.
with that. I was introduced to it with that context, so I feel very grateful for that, to have
Hmm.
been that film to being shown to me within the context where they under where they explained that it was this woman who was in a male dominated place, and she got a lot of shit for it. And I think her fascination with voodoo is fascinating too. I don't know. Keep going.
No, but I was going to say, I think that, when you're in film school and they're like, you have to watch this film and it's an important film and you need to understand this is important. And you're like, fuck you, I don't agree with any of this. I'm going to go watch Bruce Lee now, and, but yeah, later on, when I just was allowed to kind of sit with it by myself, the way it should be seen without like a professor telling me how to feel about it, it was very different. And I show it to my film class now, and I just kind of let them have it and process it. And I don't tell them anything. I just let them respond. And it still holds up. That film and Un Chien Andalou is another one. Like Buñuel became someone, Louis Buñuel, that I kept returning to as a filmmaker and as a person. Like I read his biography. Like there's certain filmmakers I'm like, I relate to your life story as well as your movies.
Yeah.
Like I think Exterminating Angel is incredible film. But Un Chien Andalou was a fucking radical, wild trip, and it still holds something. And those two movies I think are important. But just going back into what I was saying about what I'm shooting around here, yeah, I've had access to a camera. I've been shooting it on 4K. I have microphones, I have lights, and I've been performing on it because I have no one else. And like, just kind of nice because I like acting. And I've been thinking more about like fears and internal fears and how that manifests and like who we are, like what am I doing and what does this all mean? And um, thinking about stylistically bringing in elements of documentary and um, like I live near the mountains and I have all sorts of wild animals here. Like we had a bear here for a while, and it just sparks all these things in me where let me backtrack. I didn't know what the fuck I was gonna do. I wanted to make another feature film, which is a big thing. I've made Soak, Muhammad and Jane, and Profane, which are three feature films that were fiction. And then Nice Bombs and American Arab were two documentary feature films. And they take forever and they're hard. And there's really no reason to do anything. And definitely there's no reason to make a feature film. Like you really have to be solid in what you're doing for people to sit down for an hour and a half in a movie theater. Profane was interesting because again, it was about a devout Muslim sex worker, and the actor herself came from a Muslim background. She was from Morocco. She was Arab American. She wasn't like devout religious. I mean, that was my thing, but there were things in the movie that she was speaking about that were truthful, that came from her world. So there's things in this movie, like my daughter's in it, and I'm doing things like if I'm eating breakfast in the movie, is that like a fictional meal? Am I like fictionally eating breakfast? No, I'm just eating breakfast and it's in the movie. Is that a documentary? Well, it's part of this narrative, but not caring about that line and bringing things that are truthful, but again, keeping that shell that like it's sort of within this horror genre,
Yeah.
but being able to explore other things.
Like the psyche, I think you're talking about, kind of like, or
Yeah,
the
and
internal world, and
that's right. It's
subjectivity and objectivity. And I think it's interesting because because you talked, I mean, this interior world with this house that's sort of spooky, and you're in this isolation and you see things out of the corner of your eye, but then at the same time, you're within nature, which is almost like I think today people are like not afraid of nature, and that, you know, we've dominated nature so much now that we have to roll everything back. But I think the isolation in nature is is an interesting contrast within the isolation of a man or person in the room, in a man-made room. I think that'd be interesting to play off of. I can just because I see it as you know, because I think paranoia. You know, I've suffered a lot of paranoia, but I think it comes up with, you know, it can strengthen one's work, and it shows imagination, I think, too. If you, I think, um, you know, like Stephen King must be the scaredest guy in the world. You know, and even Hitchcock, you know, was afraid of police and children, and I think out of those fears, sometimes the best work can come. So are you shooting and creating as you're going along?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
weird. Like I wrote an outline for the
right.
script, and then I was like, all right, I'll you know, you write an outline, then you finish the script. But then I started shooting, and as I was shooting, I would expand the outline. And then the outline kind of turned into a loose script,
Yeah.
and
I
so
kind of
so
work
like,
in two ways. I either like write something that's finished from beginning to
mm,
end, like the mind control movie, and then I just like execute it. It goes from paper to screen. And other things that I say, well, here's some people like Death of Sex or Blood and Fire. It's like, here's some people I think I like. Let's put some costumes and some props, and let's write it as we're going along, and it would be more of a
mm,
visual poetic piece rather than sort of a lecture kind of
mm-hmm.
thing. And I think both processes are good, because it's good to be able to think on your feet if you're working low budget and have to make changes. But so you
Yeah,
made
so
an out.
I
What?
am returning to that, and I think it was also like that feeling where I'm gonna just shoot and see what I have, and I couldn't stop shooting.
Hmm.
And then I had um, a basis, and once I established that basis and the structure, like once I really understood what I'm doing, and I just stuck to that, then it got easier. And so I wrote a lot, and then was like literally just like trimming everything that was extraneous and just got down to like what's the core of this. Um,
What
you
stage
know,
are
and
you at now?
well, you know, I mean, after my divorce, you know, you see, you for a while, you have this trajectory of how you're going to be. You see yourself aligned with another person, like couplehood. You see yourself as a family, getting a house, growing old. And when that's gone, of course, I cried and was sad and went to therapy and all that stuff. That's
Okay.
fine. It's like it's almost a cliche to like go through this, but being 50, I'm 51 now, and essentially on my own, but okay, and setting up my life the way that works for me, and being a single dad and raising my daughter and changing the way I wanted to have relationships and making it functional and fluid, and just kind of sitting with myself longer and my thoughts, and just really feeling the moment and recognizing that there's value in that. Um, I
Yeah.
think the
'Cause-
pandemic just turned the volume down for everything, and
yeah.
something else came up
Yeah.
that
I
was
think.
quieter.
Yeah, I think it made us stop, and I think I've had that same, because I've had those moments where, yeah, nothing is worth nothing, that everything is meaningless, and nothing is worth doing, and there's a void. And like when I moved, I had a long commute, and I would meditate during that commute, and that started a long time ago, and I've been able to sort of make peace with the void, and like bring some love into the void, and not
That's
bring
great.
fear into the void, because if you bring fear into the void, you can get into a lot of trouble. And even like, and sort of make amends within my meditation, and sort of make peace with the void, and at the same time where I can be like, look, it's all ends in death. So what's the fucking point? Let's just cut to the chase, get to the end. Why isn't assisted suicide legal for anyone who wants to? Why can't I go to a doctor and have him put me out? Because it's all bullshit anyway. We're all going to die. So I just want it over. And this is all some kind of joke. But at the flip side is the fact that we're alive at all and have any kind of order and any kind of consciousness, the fact that life actually happens in the midst of a vast amount of nothingness is like, and you really sit with it in the fact that life is here at all and it has any semblance of order or and that love can exist or that peace can exist in these pockets is just as true and just as deep as like, yeah, we all die, so what's the point? But the fact that we're here and are conscious is fascinating. The fact that we can...
We all die, and that's the point. I mean, you can flip it easily, right? You can flip it easily because in a way, the death sort of signifies the meaning, right? Because we go, what are we going to do in the meantime? And maybe it has something to do with growing older. I'm like, I'm limited, right? I mean, if it takes like 3 or 4 years to make a movie, like we only have a handful left. But I like what you're saying about like, fuck it, we're all going to die. What does it matter? But in that, everything matters, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm getting at is that a lot of my fear, my anger, just shedding it. I'm just like when it feel it bubble up, I'm like, what's going on?
Right.
Why do I hate this person?
Right.
What's going on in me?
Yeah.
Not them.
Yeah.
And something just switched in me, you know, like I could be really frustrated about this thing, or I could just kind of let it go through me. Not push it down, just let it go and just let things go through me. Let me experience it without judgment. And you're right. But people are like, oh, I think it'd be really cool to like, you know, go to heaven or be in a space station or see a unicorn. I'm like, you know what's fucking wild? I just saw a squirrel eat a nut. Like, you know what's wild? Reality, our fingers.
Yeah,
that we can see. That we can feel and smell things, that we have this sense. I mean, reality is fucking insane. Like
it blows your mind. Yeah.
There should be nothing. Logically, there should be nothing. But there's everything, you know?
Against all odds.
But
let's take us out. Taking us out is Phil Collins with Against All Odds. This is KTOU. But in a weird way, like when you're young, you know, you're like, give me something to fight, and like I want to prove something, and that's all great. And I guess as
we're so
older,
adamant, we're so stubborn. We know everything, you know.
Yeah. And then when I hit that high, I'm like, whatever. Or you know, you get humbled, or you're like, you know, if I did, you know, I haven't become what I want, but what have I? Once I heard Denzel Washington do like a college or a graduation speech or something. And I don't know if he specifically said that, but my takeaway was, because I've always been haunted with like, my dreams didn't come true. And I'm like, fuck you, Carrie, you're a failure. Your dreams didn't come true. You had you knew exactly what you wanted to be when you were a kid and you didn't do it. And it's like and he sort of listening to him separated like goals versus dreams. Like dreams goals are like what I put on my things to do list that I can actually do today. What, you know, I want to tell this story. Okay. How do I tell it with whatever means I have without going bankrupt or risking Uncle Floyd's life insurance or whatever.
Right.
So it's like, and I've actually achieved these goals. Like I wanted to live in New York. I'm living in New York. I wanted to be able to improvise music and then also write songs. And I've been able to do that. I make films. It's like, but the dreams of are like how the world responds to me achieving those goals. It's like, well, you weren't embraced by, you know, NYU or a wider community. Yeah. It's like those things are out of my control. And those were and I was just using them to beat myself up, thinking I would get better if I beat myself up, that I would do better work. And there was something to it. And it got me to do some things. Me beating myself up and saying like, fuck it, just do it anyway. And I'm pissed at you and prove that you're not a piece of shit. But after a certain point, I'm like, why am I beating myself up? And I have a decent body of work. I look back and I'm like, it wasn't what it was, but it wasn't nothing either. And at a certain point, I'm like, I just want peace within myself and with those around me. I think, because naturally I'm going to get old and they're going to throw me in the middle of the woods and there's going to be wolves around me. Like, I don't want to have an end of life like Groucho Marx. Apparently it was horrible. Does that make sense?
I don't want, none of that stuff is appealing anymore. Like,
I want to be in a nursing home, where they don't beat me when I want a second cup of Jello and when they'll change my diaper. So I got to learn to make peace with the world.
Yeah, make peace with your diaper. It's tough. Like I definitely feel I've landed also in a good place. Someone asked me like, why aren't you in LA or New York? You're a filmmaker. I'm like, I don't know. Because I got stuck here and I've never really gravitated towards sort of the centralized places of where you're supposed to make films. I just don't care.
And I think you came from an artistic background, and that's what I find. I feel like I started as a kid as more like a painter. It's me, the brush and the canvas and the paints. It's like me and manipulating everything and having some control. It's like once I started writing words on a page, I was like, I don't know what this is. And I think, I don't know. It's almost like my soul doesn't reach to the narrative, or the LA or anything like that. I feel like the spirit is sort of, I was going to ask, like the spirit of like I like the exploration. I like not knowing. I like going into a project, not really knowing. And it's like, and discovering on the way. And if everything has the pressure of like, oh, it has to make money, or it has to appeal to a certain audience, or it has to appeal to this, I'm too much of a people pleaser. I would just die in that environment.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's make this weird thing. And I don't know how it's going to turn out, but this is exciting. That was the thing. My after school special bored me. I was like, okay, but this other thing of like, I don't know how people are going to take this. And this is really weird. And like, maybe that was exciting because there was a sense of discovery and that I was excited about the process because something cool might emerge that I didn't think of. And that's inspiring. That keeps you, that's exciting about it.
I absolutely agree. And that's what I love about kind of this more experimental approach to shooting and working the script and kind of doing it organically and letting it like be a living, breathing script. And I think that's, you said something really important, which is like, it needs to be exciting for you and it has to be exciting for me. Like, I want to walk into that tunnel, that cave, and not know what's inside. I want to be a little afraid. I want to discover something new about myself and what I'm seeing. I don't want to just like put a film on a piece of paper and then have somebody duplicate it with acting and shots.
Right.
I want to break through reality and find something else.
Have a conversation with my unconscious. Like,
that's
and
right.
if I'm able to make changes that I don't have to get studio approval, if I can make them on the fly, then I can follow my instincts, and then I can listen to the conversation. Then I can have a conversation with my unconscious. I mean, I already know how I feel about things. I already know my perspective from where I am. I want a different perspective from either people or even within my own experience. I want to go in with a certain plan that I don't waste people's time, but I want to discover. But I'm repeating myself.
It's okay. It's so funny because I was, when I was a kid, when people ask me, hey, do you know about the solar system? And I'd be like, I say yes. Be like, have you read the American Constitution? I'd say yes. Even though I never wanted to be seen as someone that was ignorant. And I was ignorant about everything, but I never wanted to be seen. Now I love not knowing. Like if someone, even if I know a little bit about something, I'm like, explain it, because I want to know more. And I don't hesitate to explore and be curious. but the more I learn and understand about the world, the less rigid I feel about what it is. Like, I was religious, and then I discovered atheism, and I sat down with my mom and made her cry, and like, was like a hardcore atheist. And then I met other atheists, and I was kind of disgusted by the way they talked and their worldview. I was like, I remember having a conversation. I was like talking about the idea of having kind of a mystical experience, and this hardcore atheist, and I'm like, define mystical. I'm like, just things that we don't understand. He's like, everything is logical and can be proven scientifically. And I was like, fuck you. Like, science isn't God. Like, I realized it's like, oh, they form their own ideology, And
Yeah,
I'm not, this is
it's
not like
all,
some God trip or anything, but I think it's okay. I mean, as artists, like, you should have one foot in awe and wonder.
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you have like space behind you, and I have this painting by my daughter of space behind me, and
And
like,
books,
yeah, and books, and
visionary film.
I mean, just look up at the fucking sky. Just look at our Earth. I mean,
Because I just think it's fear. It's like it's not like once you, it's like it's for everything has to, because it's like you can go down the science rabbit hole and get to the place where it's all a hologram or it's all about consciousness. I
yeah,
mean, and they'll and you could take them down to where material world breaks down in a scientific level. They can talk
right.
to physicists and they can say, you know, at the end there is just consciousness, or that's a credible theory these days, but it's like they probably won't get there because they need that belief, because without it there's fear. And I just think essentially the spiritual space is just fear, and if you don't, and if you lower the fear, you can have more sense of the unknown without having it to be something, and then being able to accept ambiguity and that there's other possibilities. It's the only way we learn. And a lot of people are just defending the wall that for their own ego
A wall they've built.
stability. And it's like,
Yeah,
that's fine. I don't, it's like I like to freak people out in a safe movie theater, but God love you, everybody's life is tough, do the best you can. But I mean, a lot of these things are rationalizations rather than disguised as reason. But and I just, it's just boring. I was an atheist too until I'm like, my rationale was like, look, I don't want to be here, and I was like, why can't I go to a doctor and have him euthanize me? What is the friggin' problem? Okay, I don't understand. If it's really meaningless, isn't that completely rational? And that's
sure.
completely irrational, and they'll lock you up. I mean, I didn't actually do that, but I, like, in my mind, I'm like, the only, that seemed perfectly
That's funny.
logical to
I have
me.
the same thoughts. I'll be washing the dishes. I'm like, I can totally kill myself anytime I want.
Yeah, I wasn't able
Like,
to. I needed help
learning.
at that point. I jumped on the tracks of the subway and jumped back, and I was like, and then I
Jesus
realized,
Christ.
I was like, maybe it's not my life to lose. At that point, I said, maybe
Mm,
if I don't have the cojones to take myself out, because I thought if I touch the third rail, that's gotta
mm.
take me out.
Did you touch the third rail?
No, I got
Uh,
close. I went on the tracks and I was going to touch
Geez,
the third
Gary.
rail, but I was like, and then I talked to a cop later. He's an ex-detective. And he was a security guard, and I asked him about it. I didn't tell him what I did, but I said, is it guaranteed death if you touch the third rail? He's like, no, I've seen people completely scarred and fucked up by surviving the third rail. Because in my mind, I was like, oh, that's gonna like completely, the lights are just gonna go out.
Yeah, man.
But
I knew someone that, you know, didn't know her, but she threw herself in front of a train, lost
yeah.
an arm and a leg, survived, and didn't want to die after. Like,
Yeah. But at that point
she,
I said, and I was trying to use everything to convince me to do it. And I realized, look, okay, I need another way, and maybe I'm not the center. And I found my way through like the 12 steps and stuff like that through AA
how
by
long ago
doing
was that?
that was like 7 years, because I was
Oh,
7 years dry, and that's really rough business. The point, and I think, and now I welcome, I think it's just a lessening of fear. And the less fear I have, the more I can be not have the need to know something
Or maybe
definitively
not. And I
and
think
defend a position.
I think it's also like, I think it's this sense that something's deeply wrong and we want to answer it, you know? And I think for me, I sort of let go of the question and
Okay.
just allowed myself to be as vulnerable as I can, to let myself feel whatever I needed to feel, to let myself cry and be in that place and not solve it and just let it go through me and
Yeah.
happen. And open myself to others. And it's kind of a weird blessing in disguise, to use a cliche. When you go through some of the darkest moments, it allows you to see others clear. It allows you to empathize with other people's pain. And when someone's
Yeah.
like, I'm really struggling and I want to throw myself in front of the tracks, you're like, yeah, I've been there. I literally threw myself in front of and there's something ironically that connects our humanity to these moments. If you learn from it, obviously, and go through something.
Yeah.
Um, and I, you
Some
know,
people.
I never want to be like, it's never, I always have a little cynicism. I'm never like, life's beautiful and I don't mind getting old and graying
No, it's
and I
not.
can
Yeah, it's
barely
not that.
walk because there's butterflies.
Right.
No, and that's true. But it's okay to accept that life's also fucking miserable and hard and there's darkness in it. And that's part of it. And that's all part of it.
Yeah.
And whatever we're meant to experience, we're going to experience it. And it's just important, I think, to be present.
Yeah. Do you think your films have helped you get to this place? Because they've been good, really good for me to kind of like put this ugliness in a certain place or put this anger in a certain place, and for me to sort of see it and distance it and kind of go like, I don't need to be there. I
Process
don't
it.
need to be
Yeah.
this dark in this darkness, or here's
Yeah.
this darkness. Let us laugh about it. Here's
Yeah.
this fear. Let me laugh about it. That's why I kind of like dark comedies, because I think the response to be able to laugh at the darkness is a healthy thing.
I think so. I mean, to laugh at I think, to talk about the void, I think maybe we were reacting to the void. We were saying, fuck you to the void. Maybe there's this thing that we're pushing up against. I'm not
Well,
this, I'm this. Yes. I mean, I see myself right now as a very different phase of what
yeah.
I'm doing with my
I,
films.
I don't mean to laugh at the darkness
Mm.
as to like, it's just so it doesn't consume me.
No, I
So
don't
I
mean like
don't
you're
get
laughing.
consumed. I'm not saying that it's not, I just wanted to make myself clear, um, to anyone listening, that I just think you laugh in order to process it, but not deny that it's horrifying. I mean, that was like something like Psychotic Odyssey. Within that theater experience, they were able to see the horror, laugh, and then feel horrible again. To
Yeah.
get both this is some kind of like unspeakable evil. This is the way, because this is how we laugh, because it's unprocessable, but it's here on screen. And I think it must, for it to be a communal experience, it helps people connect too. But I'm rambling.
No, I think that's it. I think
Yeah.
you kind of got it. It's like that complexity of the laughter isn't because it's funny, it's
Right.
because it's horrifying.
Right. It's
But
overwhelming. You can't process it. Yeah.
you can't process, and like laughter is lightness, and it is survival.
Yeah.
And it's truly a type of wisdom. And I think both of us, we play with that, and it's a very difficult thing where we kind of have that, that morbid, macabre, and then that humor and that absurdity. You don't know if you should laugh or be upset, or actually, some of the darkest moments are the funniest. There's something very real but also artificial, and there's
Right.
that tension. And I love that space where it's a richer sense of feeling or humor. It's not even humor in the traditional way, but um, Yeah, it's recognizing death is here, it's everywhere.
Right.
That there's something inherently absurd about living, and everything we're trying to do. If you kind of zoom out, we look ridiculous as humans. We're like fucking each other, killing each other,
Right.
eating spaghetti, arguing online, and it's kind of like, I don't know if you have this experience where sometimes you're inside your body, but sometimes you're outside.
Hmm.
You're sort of just like watching everything. I think films, in a way, helps us look outside of ourselves, and it is a kind of like, you and I like didn't go into this to make money, obviously, not like
Right.
making commercials or,
Yeah.
but we are. There is this fire in our blood that's provoking us to continuously make this, whether we like it or not. And I think there's something not completely settled.
Yeah.
I think, Len, when I was saying earlier, like we should really logically should do nothing, it's because if we were totally at peace as children or teenagers, and like balanced, healthy individuals that have gone
Uh-huh.
through therapy, I don't know if we would made the kind of work that we made.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone has said to me, "Hey, I'm really disturbed by your work. Are you okay?" I'd be like, "What do you?" Like, no one ever said that. Like, maybe they should have. Later on, a professor said, "Your stuff seems really dark." Like, I was like, "What?" And I spoke to my friend, like, "Yeah, your shit's really dark, Usama. What is that a surprise to you?" I was like, "It's not that dark." Like, I was like, well, it seems fine, but that's, I mean, slightly subjective. But I think there's something in exploring these themes that, I don't want to say help, but it feels better to do it than to do nothing. And
Yeah. And I think at
it,
least people can discuss this. You can have sort of like a controlled, safe communal experience in the, I don't know if theaters are coming back or not, and kind of go, and it's a rehearsal for the real horrors of life. I mean, I think Wes Craven said that, like, that's why the teenagers go to horror movies, to sort of like rehearse their fears of when they grow up and stuff. And I think in art, my friend said, is a civilizing enterprise, in that we can go to these dark places and we can examine them, and discuss them, and sort of like you can master them in a certain way too, and also kind of discover, like, okay, then what is this? If something, an amorphous impulse is coming to me, well, let me pick up a tool of an artist's tool, whether it's a brush or a camera or whatever, or even a melody or some chords, and let me find my way, and it'll discover itself. And I think that's the soul of human beings. But how can we wind up?
I'll tell you something.
Yeah.
I think you said it earlier about like you want to discover something, and I brought up Louis Buñuel, the filmmaker, and he said something that I really like. He said, "I admire my friends that are seeking the truth. I'm suspicious of the ones that have found it." And I think that's good,
Yeah.
because I think filmmaking is the seeking, but not the answer.
Yeah.
And the older I get, the less inclined I am to I'm not as attracted to firm ideologies anymore. When like, this is the truth, this is what life is, this is what meaning is, and definitely better feel more comfortable in that ambiguity, and allowing myself to be vulnerable, because I feel open to things that are mysterious and happening in the dark or in the night. And the stuff of dreams and nightmares they're not bad things. They're like symbols and messages, just as natural as a tree growing. These are things in us that are just who we are,
Yeah. And
and they're not separate from us.
yeah, and fear was meant to protect us, and sometimes it
Yeah.
can, now that our world has become complex, since a lot of our dangers are imaginatory or within, and not necessarily a bear or a predator in the wild, but our fears are there to protect us, and we might be maladapted. But I think we were saying about, I think, yeah, the artistic impulse is a process of seeking truth
Yeah,
rather
and
than, yeah.
it's seeking truth, and it's not necessarily healthy. I mean, I say that wrong. Like, not it's not. It is healthy. It's a good thing to be artistic and creative. But I guess what I mean is, like, there's something unsettled in the individual or the artist that needs to create, and that unsettledness isn't a bad thing. Um, it is just like a calling, I guess. At least for me, I'm not motivated by anything else except this feeling,
Yeah. And
and
I
that's
guess
it.
it's like, I mean, we're of like minds, but I think a lot of times, because I just did this talk with people, with other filmmakers, and they're very industry oriented, and they're talking about superhero films and stuff. I think a lot of times when people see films, they think of the marvels, and they don't think of that you can make films with an artistic impulse. And maybe we're being a little too precious about this, but I think it's a bit rare when people think of films, they think of a story and like characters and like, I think about ideas. I think about like more like conceptually about like, and I think um like ideas rather than a story. I'm not really drawn by stories. I'm
Yeah,
interested in like a new way to tell something that's like a new way of expressing something. But we're at
yeah. I
an
think
hour
it's
and
a
a
good.
half, and I don't want to be, but I think it's rare because we were talking about these industry people, and they're like, and I just see a lot of like short films, and they just seem like I've seen this before. Like I'd
Yeah,
rather see like a flawed
yeah,
effed up thing from
yeah.
some weird. That's why the underground film festivals was so great, because you'd go there and you
That's
wouldn't
right.
know what the hell was there, and you'd see something
That's right.
completely bizarre. Because most of the times when I see a short film, I'm bored. It's like
Yeah,
it's a mood piece that you've seen several times.
that's
I'd
right.
rather like do something. I'd rather see something wrong
That's right.
and interesting because it broke some kind of ground, or it had specifically to do about this individual,
Right.
and like so. And I hope, I guess there is no underground. It's not all above ground online. But I like that
Just
there are.
us, Carrie. Just two of us. We're the last remaining underground filmmaker.
So
But I
don't
like what
tell
you're saying.
anybody.
There's
Yeah.
something about those, right? Those more broken films. They're not precise.
They come
They
from
don't
left field.
resemble
It's like, what the
anything.
hell is
Yeah,
this? But then you're
and
like, you can't stop thinking about it.
that's right.
It's
Yeah,
like
the
that
things
guy
that
who made
stay
that.
with you.
Did you ever see that movie? The guy was like the artificial blood movie, which is all like shot on an Auricon, and like it was only like
I got a
one
strip
light
of it.
meter. It was like
Yeah, yeah,
he just like kept the aperture in like one thing. And I
yeah,
don't know, that thing, and like the Zan Price stuff, even though it's very
yeah.
Lynchian. But those ones I remember, the like effed up stuff. So how
Well,
is the
one thing.
yeah.
No, go ahead. How's the underground one?
How's the
When
underground
we,
these days? I haven't
I have
been.
no idea.
No.
I haven't been out
All
of the
right.
house, man. What do you want me
All
to?
right. So two old retired underground
I've been
filmmakers.
digging
You've been
underground.
digging?
I've been digging, playing with worms.
All right.
So, no, yeah, man. I appreciate talking with you about this, and I hope to show you maybe an early draft of the film.
Okay.
And if
And
folks want to know more, they could reach out to you.
well, why don't you email me any links or whatever you want to
Sure,
put in the.
UsamaAlshaibi.com. Yeah, my
Okay.
website.
And I'll put it on the
Mhm.
comments below on the YouTube. So you're cool with me posting this?
Yeah, I'm cool with you.
All right.
Hosting. You're great to see
Posting.
you. Great to see you, my friend.
It
We've
would
been
great. It was
together
great
for a
to
long
talk.
time.
It's been a
Yeah,
long time. I'm
yeah.
very happy for your
Uh-huh.
success. I think it's successful. I think, you know, I'm glad you made all your kinds of films, and you're still like because I think everybody should make films. Just make them your own. I want to hear from individuals, because I think everyone has genius within them.
By the way, I
Boy, oh
showed
boy, I gotta get some sleep. I gotta get
I
sleep, baby.
I did show Hey Mister, you're in the what is it? Hey Mister, you're in the
You're in the
boys'
girls'
room?
room.
Or the girls'
Girls'
room.
room. Yeah.
I did show that to my class a long time ago. I had a little like PowerPoint page about you, and I taught your
Oh, that's
little
cool. That's
yeah.
awesome.
I love that film. It's like we were talking about like what
What the
what's going
fuck?
on.
Yeah,
That was
exactly.
one of them.
All
I never
right.
forgot it.
Beautiful.
But yeah, man, it's been good knowing you all these years, and um, yeah, I appreciate this.
Glad you're sober. Glad you're alive.
Same with you, buddy.
Glad, even
Glad we're both
though,
alive.
yeah, even though life has taken swings, you're still swinging back. All right, so that'll wrap it up for this episode of Earthlings of Interest. Oh my God,
Mwah.
I gotta get some sleep.
Go get some
Peace.
sleep.
All right,
Peace.
cheers.
Cheers.